and good morning. Thank you for being on time for this webinar. It's our financial year ending webinar. Very exciting one at that as well. And as usual, we would love for everyone to put their videos on so that we can have a nice engaging session with the speaker. We're going to start off with a short video on DanaMojo for all of y'all, and we will then move on to the presentation. So give me a second and I will get that going. I think our video is refusing to get shown in my share screen. So maybe we'll push this off for now, and we'll begin straight away with Suman. So let me give you a short introduction of Suman before we start off. Suman has a very diverse and diverse background, and whatever description or whatever thing I tell you about him is not going to be enough. I think you'll realize much more during the presentation, but let me try nevertheless to give you a short background on Suman, our speaker for today. So Suman is a graduate of Delhi University, IIM Ahmedabad and IMD Lausanne. He's an advertising man, strategist, author, marathon runner, teacher, social worker, sports fan, creative bartender, as well as an entrepreneur. Suman has been the CEO of Euro RSCG India for 5 years and also the Chief Strategy Officer for Euro RSCG Asia Pacific. Lastly, he was Vice Chairman and Chief Strategy Officer of FCB Ulka Group in India. He has been associated with established brands such as Raymond, Johnson & Johnson, Times of India, Samsung. He has also worked with several startups and early stage companies. Some of them are Carrot Lane, Haymat, School, Hector, etc. Suman loves teaching and has taught at IIMs in Ahmedabad and Bangalore, ISB Hyderabad, IITs at Bombay and Kharagpur, and MICA amongst many other institutions. He is currently taking a course on marketing at the Indian School of Development Management. Suman has been very active in the voluntary sector where he works on causes that range from schooling for slum children to child sexual abuse to rural tourism to skill development. He's part of the leadership team at Indian School of Development Management, a trustee at Apnale, a director of the CSR advisory firm Samita, and a key member of iVolunteers Whiteboard Initiative. Suman is also part of the advisory council at DanaMojo, and I personally thank him very much for taking our session today. Thank you so much, Suman, and over to you.
Thanks, Dhaval, and good morning, everyone. So hopefully you'll have a useful session, so let me just get started right away. I've called this session Don't Beg, Inspire. And, I don't know how many of you saw Dhaval's LinkedIn post on this, and he said it was insulting to the social sector. I didn't mean to be insulting at all, of course. I mean, the whole idea was to be that, we tend to keep asking for things. We ask people for money. We ask people to change. We request people and so on. And so the whole idea is that, maybe leaders don't beg, they inspire. So let me talk about that. And we start by saying, if you really want to raise money, and this is supposed to be for people who are trying to raise money, since DanaMojo is in helping NGOs raise money. If you actually wanted to raise money, the business you should be in is religion, right? That's really where the serious money is. And when you look at our country, I found this on the net. I don't know how they made these estimates, but, Tirupati gets 650 crores per annum, and, Sai Baba temple, 320 crores. And, these are large numbers. And, these are probably, to me, it feels like they are underestimates. And on the other hand, if you look at spiritual gurus, each of these people on the screen probably are worth over 1,000 crores. So really, they seem to be getting money quite easily, whereas we often in the social sector tend to struggle a bit. And when you think about the people who donate to all these religious places, temples, and to these religious sects, I wonder if they ask the questions that we get asked all the time, right? I mean, what is your theory of change? Or, why is your overhead so high? Or, what's your cost per impact? Or what's your reporting mechanism and things like that? And so we can look at it and say, how do they manage to get so much money without all the questions that we get asked when we ask donors for money? So that's one point. The other thing we can think about is somebody like Gandhiji, right? We can argue that he was India's best ever fundraiser. I mean, think about it. I mean, he came back from South Africa in 1915, and he really didn't have any money or anything like that. And he had this huge campaign to do effectively, and a huge movement to run, which costs money. And he got all these people like Ghanshyam Das Birla and Jamnalal Bajaj and others who financed him. And not just him, but also people, the rank and file of Indians across the country. And what is interesting is that he didn't actually, give sponsorship rights. It wasn't like this was the Birla Dandi March or, the Bajaj Quit India movement or something like that. In fact, on the contrary, everybody who sort of donated to him actually called themselves Gandhians. So they are followers of Gandhi and they are Gandhians and so on. And you look at that and say, that's quite different from the way we behave. Often in the social sector, we put our donors on a pedestal, and whatever the donor says is something that we have to listen to, or we sort of tend to follow. Whereas maybe leaders, whereas real leaders, they are on the pedestal, and other people tend to follow them. So that's really what led me to this title, right? Because the whole idea being that leaders don't beg, they inspire, and what leaders do is create movements. And so actually, my core area of work, which I teach, and is about creating movements. I obviously don't have time to talk here about all the movements and so on. So what I will do in this session, though, is take a part of that and so my session here is going to have these parts. So the first is I want to talk about some case studies, which in my view are very innovative, and they are not the intuitive way that you would go about raising money. So I want to present those cases. And from there, I want to derive something that I'm calling a 4-win model. And so I will introduce that 4-win model of fundraising to you. And then when you'll see that in that model, it's almost important. One of the things that is important is that there is a need for a brand. And we'll talk about brands a little bit. And why is it that the social sector is quite skeptical about brands, or at least thinks that brands have a very limited role to play in their lives. And then recommend perhaps a new brand model, because the brand model that exists is really for the corporate sector. And often that corporate sector brand model is not that relevant in the social sector. And so therefore we'll sort of tweak it a little bit and come up with a new brand model. And then show how that new brand model works by looking at 4 different organizations, all of which are in the education sector. And so you look at how those 4 brands, all 4 are quite strong brands in the education sector and have grown quite rapidly in about the last decade or so, and look at them and say, how are their brands different? So that's all that we're going to cover in this 1.5 hours. So let's get started. So there's a lot to do. So inspiring stories of fundraising. So now I want to take you back to the early and mid 1980s. And at that time, the task was, how do you fight cancer? How do you raise money for cancer? And it's a fairly, we think about it and say, we talk about data about people who got cancer. We tell stories about people who got cancer and so on. And specifically when you get into breast cancer, and there was this lady, and, so the point here is that breast cancer is not even the most the most virulent form of cancer. It's actually number 5 in the list of this, but it raises the most amount of money. And the person credited with having really created a revolution as far as breast cancer is concerned, and a revolution as far as fundraising for the social sector is concerned, is this lady called Nancy Brinker. And Nancy Brinker's sister died of breast cancer at the age of 36. Her name was Susan Komen, and therefore she named her foundation the Susan G. Komen Foundation. And she wrote this book called Promise Me, which is based on the fact that she promised her sister that, I'll make sure not too many people die from this, or, we can fight this thing called breast cancer. And so Nancy Brinker started a movement under this Susan Komen Foundation to raise money to fight cancer, to do research in cancer. And she created a lot of the things that today we take for granted. For example, this whole idea, those pink ribbon, which we see so ubiquitous, was something that she created. This idea of October is breast cancer month. This thing about in that breast cancer month, there were runs and walks and other kinds of activities pretty much across the length and breadth of America. And this is like 2019, the number of walks and runs that were being conducted across the country for that. But the most important thing that she did was to invent this thing called cause marketing. Before that, there were 1 or 2 companies like American Express, which had done, cause marketing, which basically propounded one cause, but that cause was specific to them. What she did was she went to a bunch of companies and she got all of them to sort of sponsor things or activities, events, whatever, related to breast cancer. And these are, who's who of American corporate world, Amazon, Bank of America, Budget, Walgreens, so on and so forth. And get involved in multiple ways with cause marketing, employee engagement, event sponsorship, all of these things which we now think are kind of standard in the toolkit of raising money were kind of invented by her. And I'm going to show you one commercial, which was one of the earliest cause marketing commercials in the world. It's for a yogurt brand. And it basically, the idea is that if you save a lid of that yogurt brand, it will help in the fight against cancer.
Seems like the whole town's here. Friends and ribbons fill the park. She knows she's not alone. It makes her smile and it breaks her heart. Her daughter is holding her hand, a balloon tied on her wrist. She says, "Mommy, everyone's dressed in pink. Look how pretty it is." And it reminds her of coming here when she was just a little girl, holding her own mother's hand. It was an innocent world when pink was just a color and ribbons tied back hair. Every race was just for fun, and she ran without a care. Today is one step closer to being like back when pink is just a color again.
And so over the years, Susan Komen Foundation has raised over $1 billion now that they have. I mean, think about it, $1 billion, 75,000 crores in today's money, if you look at today's exchange rate, which is amazing when you think about this one woman sort of started it. And she wasn't really, I mean, she didn't have, when she started, she didn't have much of an organization and so on. I mean, and it's absolutely amazing what she's done. And, you know, there are people who criticize some of the work that she does because it's such a large foundation. But on the other hand, I just marvel at the fact that here's this lady and she kind of changed the world, created a template that other people have followed since then, and probably we still follow in some ways now. I'm going to stay with the idea of disease and talk about another disease, right? So this whole idea of how do you raise money to fight AIDS in Africa? And again, let's go back to a time when Americans were saying, this is not our problem. AIDS is Africa's problem, or AIDS is a problem for gay people, and it serves them right or whatever, because there was that Christian feeling that gay people, it was fine. And along comes a man, and we all know him, Bono. So yes, Bono was famous. He was a singer, but he was, there are many famous singers. But what's amazing about Bono is he's been nominated for a Grammy, an Oscar, a Golden Globe, and the Nobel Peace Prize. He actually won the other three. It's only the Nobel Peace Prize that he hasn't won. He's been knighted by the governments of the United Kingdom, France, and Portugal. And again, getting knighted by one country is good enough. 3 is quite something. He was in the running to become the Secretary General of the United Nations, and he's been Time Person of the Year in 2005. And so what he's really done, and one of the things that he's really done, is this whole idea of raising money for AIDS. And he, of course, did a concert and so on. But post that, he runs an organization which is called Red with 2 brackets. And the whole idea is very simple. It's shop red and save lives. So he goes to companies and he tells them, why don't you produce one more model of your product in red color? And then the proceeds from that particular model, please donate for AIDS. And so he goes to companies like Apple, like Gap and Bank of America, all kinds of companies around the world. In fact, just now, if you go to Amazon.com and you give yourself an American address, deliver to, you'll see that there is a section called Red, and there's a whole, you can click on it and see, you can see red merchandise, Apple, technology, health and beauty, home goods, fashion, kitchen, travel, fitness. In all kinds of categories, they have red products. And all these products, when you buy, you will basically contribute to the fight against AIDS. So I'm going to show you 2 films now. One is like a corporate film for the Red Foundation, and the other is a commercial that they ran to help to get people to buy red products.
We all live for someone to die for, someone to take off the weight of the world for, someone to stand beside with nothing but bullets fly. And when the day's done, everything I've done, anything I've lost is worth whatever cost. 'Cause now that you're around, nothing can hurt me now. And love shouldn't have to be a war, but if I have to, I'll fight them all. No one's gonna tell us what to do now.
Hello, this is Barry Manilow. I write the songs that make the whole world sing. How may I help you?
Hey, Barry, it's Jimmy Kimmel.
Hi, Jimmy. Nice to hear from you. What's up?
Do you always answer the phone like that?
Always.
We're doing this big charity thing called Red, and it's a great charity. They're launching a huge holiday shop-a-thon, and all the proceeds go toward eradicating AIDS.
And you need me to write a song that will make the whole world sing?
Get to work.
Okay, this should be easy.
Wouldn't you like to do something good? Just by shopping, I bet that you would. Well, now is your chance, 'cause starting today, your holiday dollars go a long, long way. Join the Red Shop-a-thon, Red Shop-a-thon. Shop Red.
Shop Red.
Save lives.
Wow, that was catchy. Who wrote that?
Not bad.
And so, of course, people who buy it, then they share it on social media, and then Red sort of helps that and grows it. Then, of course, there are people, all the brands do their own advertising around Red. So this whole thing has become this huge movement, which has resulted over the years in Red having raised $600 million and impacted 180 million lives. And again, we can look at this and say, starting from nothing, I mean, okay, he was a singer and he was famous as YouTube, but there are so many singers, and the ability to do a sort of a campaign like this is, I think, brilliant. The third case I want to do is much smaller in scope. It's actually one NGO working with one corporate partner and trying to raise money to help senior citizens in their country. So the brand in question is called Innocent Foods. They make smoothies, fruit drinks, basically, for which young people like. And what they do every year is that they do this thing called the Big Knit, where they ask people, whoever, to knit little caps that they can put on top of the bottles, like as if the bottle are feeling cold. So they need little caps during the summer, during the winter. And so as you can see, there's some very innovative caps. And because of this, they stand out in the supermarket shelf and they get bought. And of course, the proceeds from those bottles go to help Age UK. So Age UK is the charity that works with this, and together, Age and Innocent Foods does a whole lead up to this, where they share, but teach people how to knit. So they have patterns which is for beginners and for intermediate and expert knitters. And you got they share things like this, right? This lady made so many caps for Innocent Foods. This is a number of caps that were sort of spilling out in the Innocent Foods office. And then, of course, Age UK itself uses this as a way of talking about what the work that they are doing, and in individual chapters and so on and so forth. And that ends up raising about £2.5 million. So again, huge campaign. We'll derive lessons from all of these in just a second. And again, coming back to India now, and if you think about saying, okay, you're a NGO which works for rural electrification, and you want to get, you want to do solar power, solar lantern in the rural villages, how would you raise money for it? And I want to take you back to a few years ago when NDTV Toyota was doing this Greenathon, which on the face of it, just fun and games where for 24 hours or so, you could see, celebrities from from all walks of life really come and have fun and games, entertain you for the whole day. And some of them would come and give money, and they would encourage all viewers to also give money support in whatever way. And that would often result, and they would talk about how that money is getting used. And so essentially what was happening was there was an NGO called Terry behind it. And Terry was setting up these solar power charging stations in each village, where there would be a micro entrepreneur such as this lady here, who would charge these solar lanterns during the day, and then in the night lease it out for like 2 rupees or 3 rupees each. And so that families would have light and a charging point for their mobile phones or whatever during the night. So this was the model. And Greenathon raised like in the last year that they ran it, they raised about 8.89 crores in like one day. And you look at it and say, wow, how do you raise 9 crores for rural electrification in literally in one day? And say, wow, that's very interesting. So if I look at these four models, right? I mean, four examples, four cases, we can derive some kind of a model which might be a little different from what we normally do. So what we normally do is that we use compassion to raise money. So typically our messaging is something like this. We try and approach donors who care for our cause, and we talk to them about the problem and the cause and the work that we are doing. And then we say, could you please support us? So this is the standard way. But if you look at all of these people, the way they've approached it is in 4 steps. So Innocent Foods is not really interested in senior citizens. They're interested in young people. But what happens is that young people get attracted to Innocent Foods because of these quirky little caps. And perhaps, again, the opportunity to knit those caps and opportunity to contribute to a good cause. So the role that Age UK does is to sort of to connect these people together. So there's a 4-way win. Innocent Food wins because it attracts young customers. Young customers win because they get, they feel like they're contributing to a cause. Age UK wins, obviously, because they get money for their cause and they get publicity for the work that they're doing. And seniors win because obviously they get the help from Age UK. That's really how Red works as well, because basically what Red is saying, you just have to do your normal shopping and you will be contributing to this great cause. Therefore, the companies get a rub off. So it's actually what Red is doing is raising money, not from the CSR funds of companies, but really out of their marketing budgets. And obviously the NGOs who work with AIDS, on AIDS, get the money and the patients benefit. Similarly with Terry, so NDTV and advertisers get viewers and get a positive rub off. Viewers get entertainment plus the joy of giving. Terry gets funds and visibility because again, NDTV would do run-ups to these big events. So each day they would go to, each week they would have a show which talks about how the money from the previous year has been used and the villages that were electrified, and talk to the people and what difference it has made in their lives and so on and so forth. So that's the win-4 model. The 4-win model rather, because I think what happens is, as we said, that in the social sector, we focus on 3 of these audiences. We don't focus on the 4th, which is the privileged customer. And in some ways, if you want to get more CSR funds, I think it's really important that we create a movement where even the so-called privileged customers get involved with that underprivileged. If you can create that movement, then people will come and want to support you rather than you having to go to them and sort of beg them or whatever to say, can you please support us and so on and so forth. So I think that that's really the big thing. But obviously, if you're going to get privileged people to support you, you need to build a brand, like the Red brand or the Susan Komen brand or whatever. And I think that that's really why you need brands. And before I start talking about why we need brands, I think I'd like to, many of you may have seen a TED talk by Melinda Gates, which is titled, What Nonprofits Can Learn from Coca-Cola. And she's got 3 things that she talks about. Well, one of them that she talks about is marketing. And she says, the social sector is very good at understanding the needs of people, of society, of the community. And we are good at providing for the needs of the community. But what we're really bad at is then linking those needs to the want of the community. So people might need something, but they want some other things. And Coca-Cola is pretty good at making people want something, which they may not really need. They may not really need that sugar water, but they will want it. And that's the difference, right? How does the social sector go from connecting the needs to the wants? And that's really what brands do very well. And so I think that that's a very powerful statement. If you haven't seen her talk, I'd encourage you to look at it, because she talks about how Coca-Cola does it very well, and how in India, for example, she talked about Swachh Bharat work, and how when you build the toilets, you've built it. You feel that you've done your job by providing toilets, but have you created a desire for people to use those toilets, and how the toilets get used for storage and other reasons? And so how can you create the linkage between need and want? But as I started working on social sector, and I've been working for several years now, the one thing that came through was that, in the social sector, other than people who are involved with fundraising, branding is a bad word. And, I was having a chat with someone who's one of the senior people in the sector. And I said, why is it that marketing and branding is such a bad word in social sector? And she said, because branding is marketing, and marketing is about markets. And social sector works where markets fail. I think that's an excellent point. Social sector works where markets fail. And so marketing therefore becomes a bad word. And of course, branding is all about marketing. So that's a bad word too. And actually, when you go deeper into it, there are other issues with branding. I mean, branding is seen as a top-down thing. And we are much more in the social sector democratic. It's about marketing gain. It's about money. We are not about money. It's about, branding is seen as being bad for coalitions. It's about much more about organizational vanity. And for all these reasons, it feels like the current model of branding that exists is probably not relevant for the social sector. And therefore, there's a whole lot of work that academics and others, consultants have been doing to try and evolve a new model for branding. And one of these is, are these two researchers. One is from the Harvard Kennedy School, and the other is actually a consultant. So Natalie is the Harvard professor and Julia is a consultant. And they've written this book called The Brand Idea, where the idea is actually an anagram for saying integrity, democracy, and affinity. And they're saying that there is a model for nonprofits, which is not based on integrity, democracy, and affinity, which does not need to look at the other values. But they make a very interesting point, which is that we tend to think of brand only in terms of talking to others. So when I ask NGOs, why do you need a brand? They'll say, oh, to raise money, or they want us to tell our story to others and so on. And really, I think the bigger point is you need brand internally a lot more than you need the brand externally. Because what happens is when you have a sharp brand, you have a sharp identity. You know what it is that you're doing. And if everybody in the organization, all employees, all volunteers, everybody, even the external, all your collaborators, everybody who works with you knows what you're doing, then there will be cohesion in what everybody is doing. That will lead to additional capacity. And as the capacity increases, that feeds back to a stronger identity. So that's on the internal side. On the external side, if you have a strong image, then that leads to trust in the community. That trust leads to greater impact. And that impact then feeds back to a stronger image. And it only works if the identity and the image is aligned with each other. And so that's really the big point that the authors make in this idea, in the book called The Brand Idea, that you need to align your identity and image in such a way that you create cohesion internally and trust externally. And that leads to greater capacity and therefore greater impact. And that feeds back to identity and image. And so really in my classes, and I'm trying to write a book called The Don't Beg, Inspire, I'm talking about this model and taking it to saying it's not just relevant for raising money, but it's also relevant as to achieve social change on ground, or to do advocacy, or to get volunteer engagement or employee engagement, etc. Every aspect of communication that social sector organizations need to do, you need to understand this brand model. So it's a much larger thing than just for fundraising. But for the moment, we talk only of fundraising. Right? So what is this brand model? So this brand model, obviously, because the social sector is all about purpose, we keep saying we are a not-for-profit. Yeah, we are not-for-profit. But what are we for? And we are a for-purpose organization, or we are for-impact organization. And so we've got to take a new form of branding, which includes vision, mission, values, and so on and so forth. And many of you may have seen this TED Talk by Suman Srivastava. But if not, please go and see the whole TED Talk. I'm going to show you an excerpt from Suman Srivastava's TED Talk, and then we'll build on that.
I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. People don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
People don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. And think about it, the corporate sector is getting into purpose. Brands are about purpose. And we in the social sector, who are all about purpose anyway, don't talk about our purpose. You go to most websites of NGOs, and what it says is, here's what we do, here's who we do it for, here's who we are, please support us. So who we are, what we do, and who we do it for, that's it. It's almost like there's a template for it. We're always we're not doing enough about the why. And I think that this is really the big point that I want to make, because why is inspiring? Think about the Mahabharata. At one level, the Mahabharata is the story of a property dispute between cousins. Right? That's all there is. Two sets of cousins, two branches of the family want the same piece of land, and they decide to go to war to get it. If that is all there was to it, then there's no way the story could have been as popular as it is and survived thousands of years. But what happens in the middle is the philosophy, is the purpose, is Krishna telling Arjun, if you like, providing him purpose, dharma, and why do we need to do what it is that we do? And that why is what elevates this whole story, this thing, into this fable that we've learned all the while. So really, it's about saying why, how, what, the golden circle that Simon Sinek talks about, except that I don't like writing these circles because they're kind of clumsy to write in this why, how, form. So I like to use the brand hut, if you like, where the base is what you do, and then on the roof is the why of the purpose of what that you do, and the how you're different are the pillars. And so let me quickly give you one example, and this is something that both Dhaval and I have been involved with from very, very early days. We started by Venkat, and when we met Venkat, this whole idea of, he wanted to create a festival of giving. He said, there's a festival for everything else. Can we create a festival of giving, where in 1 week, which is basically the week of Gandhi Jayanti, we have people giving? And he said, no, the idea is not to raise money. The idea is to create a culture of giving. So I don't want to raise 1 crore from one person. I want to raise 1 rupee from a crore, 1 crore people. And so that's the whole idea. And we positioned it. My agency was at that time, we were working with Venkat and his team. So we said, we want to focus on the internal joy that you get in giving. This is not about just giving because that poor person needs it. It's because you feel good about it. And now think about DanaMojo. It is now an 11-year-old festival. And it is an organization which does not have an organization. It's a brand that is not owned by anybody. It's a purely collaborative effort. There's no formal organization. The thousands of individual events that totally make up the movement. Each event could be owned by an NGO, by a corporate, by just volunteers, by a building community, by the government, whoever. Everybody's involved in this. And the only way all of these people could move in one direction is they clearly understand what this brand is about. What is this thing called the joy of giving? And the way, so there are events and there are whatever. So we don't really do very much, right? We just nudge people along and we talk a little bit about this yellow dot, this happy dots. If you've done something good, if you've donated something, where it's sort of like they do a selfie with this happy dot, a bit like how you do selfies with the black dot after you voted. And not last year, 2 years ago, they did this song, which was, I thought, brilliantly written. And if you listen to the words, it really captures this idea of the joy of giving beautifully. So just watch this video.
रूठे हुए कोनों में, छिपे से खिलौनों में, भूली हुई यादें बंद पड़ी है ढेर सारी, खुशियों की अलमारी तालों में है बेचारी, खोलो दिलदार होके करो आज तैयारी, बांटते हैं हम जो खुशी मिल जाती है वापस वही, सौदा बड़ा है ये अजीब देखे ना कोई हुआ गरीब, दानोत्सव प्यार का उत्सव है ये, उत्सव है ये जी, दानोत्सव दिल से तुम देके देखो, देके देखो जी, दानोत्सव प्यार का उत्सव है ये, उत्सव है ये जी, दानोत्सव दिल से तुम देके देखो, देके देखो जी, सुने सुने चेहरों को भोली मुस्कान दे, कल की पिटारियों से आशा का सामान दे, राज सारे खुशियों के मिलते हैं खोने में, देख ले आज तू भी खुशी कितनी देने में, दानोत्सव प्यार का उत्सव है ये, उत्सव है ये जी, दानोत्सव दिल से तुम देके देखो, देके देखो जी, दानोत्सव प्यार का उत्सव है ये, उत्सव है ये जी, दानोत्सव दिल से तुम देके देखो, देके देखो जी, दानोत्सव.
I really like that song and I really like that Dalai Lama smile. So if I then use the brand model to define the DanaMojo brand, right? So the what does DanaMojo do? It's an annual week-long festival of giving celebrated all over India. And the characteristics of that festival is that it's about fun, it is participative, it is local, it's very diverse. And therefore, why the purpose is get everyone to experience the joy of giving. So the whole idea is that if you experience the joy of giving, maybe you will continue to give after that again and again and again. So in any case, the focus is on 1 week, October 2nd to October 9th, experience the joy of giving. So that's the whole idea of the brand. It's quite a simple sort of a construct. Now, let me show you how this works for different brands that are in the same area, because I get this pushback a little bit saying, yeah, but does that mean that all brands which are, let's say, in education, would they all just be talking about education? How are they differentiated from each other? So let me take you through 4 brands, all in the same space of education, and we can then see how they're different. So the first brand is Teach for India. And it's fascinating where Shaheen talks about, I'm giving you an opportunity to change India, And she says over there, if you can read it, and I'll just read it, a big part of what builds a great organization is being able to answer the why of the work you're doing and how deeply you understand the why. And I was fascinated by this whole focus on why and this whole focus of giving you the opportunity to change India. She's not actually talking about just about the children and the educational inequality, etc. And at the very beginning of the journey for Teach for India in India, they had these ads, and I just want to read out a couple of these ads for you. So here's the first one. You could settle for the designation, the neat paycheck, the long internship, the safety of the herd, a boss, a schedule, your dad's profession, your mom's approval, a compromise of dreams, a known tomorrow, 100 known tomorrows for a name printed on a card. Or you could fight for that dream you've always had, for change, for a changed nation, for 100 kids you don't even know, for their freedom and your freedom, for the leaders they could become and the leader you know you can be, for a name carved in history. Teach for India needs leaders and visionaries to build the nation and their career. Here's the second one. There you follow, here you lead. There you have a hierarchy of bosses, here 100 voices calling you sir. There lines you cannot cross, here minds to set free. There a ladder to climb, here a door to hold open. There a cubicle, here a nation. Teach for India needs leaders and visionaries to build the nation and their career. And you know, over the years, I've met so many Teach for India fellows, and they're so imbibed with this spirit, this Teach for India. They all understand it, they can all communicate it, and it's not just the fellows, but you know, right down the line. And what is amazing about this organization that really built it up on the backs of these stories. Every time you hear Shaheen Mistry speak, whether it's a TED talk or any other talk or an interview or whatever, she's always telling you stories. And you know, she's written this book about redrawing India, and Sandeep Rai, who's the CEO of Teach for India, written the book called Grey Sunshine, which is all about individual stories. And this is how they communicate, the stories of personal transformation of people. And so if I were to write the brand hut for Teach for India, this is my way. Right? I've taken words from their website, but it's not kind of approved by them. So what they do is, we get bright young people to teach underprivileged children in low resource schools. That is the what of Teach for India. And how they do it is personal transformation. They transform you, right? They transform the person. It's really focused on that fellow, because that's the big thing they do. They get bright young people to want to work in underprivileged children. And that's the only way they can fight education inequality in our country. So they want educational equity. They want to work collectively. So these are their values, and therefore the why, the purpose is the opportunity to change India. I think that's really inspiring. That's what, you know, year after year gets those fellows in to get to spend 2 years of their lives after their education to work for, work with underprivileged children. And a lot of them, like 70% of these people, stay on in the social sector. That is what's amazing. Here are kids who probably were headed for a career in the corporate sector, probably going to make, sell soap and do whatever else, and then they get and stay in the sector. This is absolutely amazing, the transformation that they go through. So that is one brand in the education space. A similar brand started at a similar point in time by a similar young lady, is Educate Girls. So this is started by Safina Hussain, and she's got this huge plan to empower 1.6 million out-of-school girls in India. But her take is quite different. First of all, she's fully, Educate Girls is fully in rural India. In fact, in the districts of rural India, where there is the greatest gender disparities and the fewest number of girls per 1,000 boys and stuff like that, right? So it's where villages of Rajasthan is where she started. I'm going to show you a little video of what Educate Girls does.
उनका जैसा स्तर है वो उसी प्रकार का सोचते हैं कि हम पढ़े नहीं है तो हमारी ज़िंदगी निकल गई, तो हमारे बच्चे भी इसी खेतों में अपनी ज़िंदगी निकाल सकते हैं। दूसरा, काम का आर्थिक स्थिति के कारण कि हमारे घर में कमाएगा नहीं तो लाएगा कौन। और हम कमाने जाएंगे तो घर में रहेगा कौन, इन बच्चों को कौन संभालेगा, हम बच्चे संभालेंगे तो कमाने कौन जाएगा। तो उस स्थिति में जो बच्ची 5वीं 6ठी पढ़ लेती है उसके बाद उस बच्ची का पढ़ना छुड़वा के घर के कामों में लगा देते कि बेटा ये कर। ये लड़की पहले तो स्कूल जा रही थी पास के गांव में, जो प्राइवेट स्कूल से वहाँ पे पढ़ रही थी, जब इसके पिताजी कुवैत रहते थे। जब उसके पिताजी की तबीयत खराब होने के बाद कुवैत से रिटर्न हुए, उसके बाद उनके घर की स्थिति ऐसी नहीं थी कि वो बच्ची को आगे पढ़ाई के लिए भेज सके। तो हम उस बच्ची के घर पे गए फील्ड कोऑर्डिनेटर रवीना के साथ, और उसके माता पिता को कन्वे किया कि ये बच्ची इस स्कूल में पास के जो भी बच्चे वो भी, और उसका बड़ा भाई मनीष वो पहले से इस स्कूल में एनरोल्ड था। तो उन लोगों को अवेयर करने के लिए हमने सरपंच के साथ और संस्था प्रधान के साथ और वार्ड पंच एसएमसी सदस्य उन सबको लेके एक बार ग्राम शिक्षा सभा, जब हमने जुलाई में स्कूल खोली तो एक बड़े स्तर की मीटिंग की थी। जैसा कि मोनिका का एडमिशन हुआ, एडमिशन के पश्चात उसके ठहराव के लिए भी हमने नियमित रूप से महीने में 1 या 2 बार उसके घर पे विशेष तौर पे हम जाते थे, क्योंकि वो बच्ची हमारे लिए हार्डकोर बच्ची थी कि उसका एडमिशन करवाना था।
तो मुझे बहुत प्राउड फील होता है कि मैं पेरेंट्स को अच्छे से मोटिवेट करती हूँ कि वो लड़कियों को पढ़ाएं। लड़कियाँ भी इंसान ही होती हैं, तुम्हारी तरह होती हैं, उनके भी सपने होते हैं, वो भी आगे बढ़ना चाहती हैं। अगर आप अवसर ही नहीं दोगे तो वो आगे बढ़ेंगे कैसे? जैसे स्कूल भेजेंगे नहीं तो पढ़ेंगे कैसे? अगर कोशिश जारी रहती है तो फिर बदलाव आना जरूरी है, और होगा बदलाव। ज्ञान का पिटारा किट है, उसमें 3 सब्जेक्ट होते हैं, हिंदी, गणित और इंग्लिश। उसको चित्र भी दिखाया जाता है, उसको वर्ण भी अलग से बताया जाता है, शब्द भी अलग से बताते हैं। तो इसमें परिवर्तन तो देखने को मिला है। पहले क्या है, वो बहुत डरती थी, जैसे यहाँ पे लोगों के सामने ऐसे बहुत कम बोलती थी वो। पर जैसे ज्ञान का पिटारा किट जब हम लाए, हमने जब पढ़ाना शुरू किया तो बोलना स्टार्ट किया उसने।
They did this campaign some time back to raise funds, and the campaign was entirely based on what happens if children, girls don't go to school. So B for bride, 46% of girls in India are child brides. This is their age to be in school, not in marriage. Educate Girls takes them to school instead. Join the cause, educategirls.in. C for child, 22% of child brides becomes mothers before they turn 18. H for husbands, child brides are 2 times more likely to be beaten by their husbands. I for in-laws, child brides have little status and no decision-making powers. N for marriage, 68% of girls in Rajasthan are married before the legal age and estimated 15% below the age of 10. S for stove, child brides are compelled to leave school and take care of household chores. So while Educate Girls on the face of it is also in the space of education, but I think their brand idea is very different. So the way they work, what do? We leverage existing community and government resources to ensure that all girls are in school and learning well. So as Fina keeps saying, we don't want to set up a parallel school system or something. Just as Teach for India tries to improve the so-called low-income schools, or some of them are private, some of them are municipal schools or whatever, they work with government schools because government has the infrastructure. There's no point trying to recreate infrastructure. But the reason the infrastructure doesn't work, teachers don't come to school or the school is in disrepair, is because the community doesn't put pressure. So the way they work is with community volunteer. So they have Team Balika girls. You saw that one of the girls, or Team Balika people, you saw 2 of them in the video, who work with the parents and everybody in the community to make sure that the girl goes to school, because it's such a big challenge. It's not just convincing 1 or 2 people. It's a whole community that needs to be. So they work with the government, they remove hurdles to access education. And I think their why is really about girls. It's about India will progress when its girls progress. And that's why it makes so much sense. So again, you look at that purpose that is there, it feels like everybody within Educate Girls knows this purpose and can probably talk about it. So Teach for India, Educate Girls, very different sort of brands, even though they're in the education space. The third brand I want to talk about is Pratham. And Pratham is probably one of the leaders in raising money, especially in the diaspora, especially abroad, and from a retail funding. So they're just amazing as a machine. But what they're all about is they do this education status of education report every year, where basically they go to 24 states and they survey people and try and figure out how good is the quality of learning. So it's not just about saying, are they going to school, but what are they learning in school? And how can we improve that quality of learning? So just as you saw one girl in the previous video, now you're going to see the story of another girl and how that changed with Pratham.
Every year, thousands of young Pratham instructors help 1 million children to learn to read in just 40 to 60 days. The bond created in this short period is incredible. This is a story about one such bond. This is Meera of village Basi in Rajasthan in October 2012.
मेरा नाम मीरा, रकम रा, म लगम ला रामलाल.
She could not read, although she was in grade 5. Pratham's instructor Mohanlal conducted a learning camp in Meera's village, and Meera learned to read within 2 months.
पिताजी ने नीम पेड़ पर झूला डाल दिया. देखा कि सब सहेलियां बारिश में झूला झूलने आती थी. सबको खूब मजा आता था.
This is Meera in high school.
मेरा बिग बॉस की वीडियो है.
We met Meera again 2 years later. She will complete her grade 10 soon. Now, she aspires to go to college and become a teacher. As we walked to her primary school, Meera remembered the old days. Then she started talking about Mohanlal. This is where he taught her and others to read and write.
पता नहीं वो भी आपको याद करते होंगे कि नहीं?
बच्चों को पढ़ाते तो याद ही नहीं होता. तो एक है इसलिए सबको याद कर लेते हैं.
अब हमारे पास भी आपके लिए एक सरप्राइज है.
The act of teaching a child to read may be a simple one, but to the child, it is joyful, profound, unforgettable, and life-changing.
Again, see how much the focus is on the purpose and not on Pratham. I mean, Pratham is a large organization. They could talk about all the places they're in and what they do and, so on and so forth. So this is my interpretation of Pratham's brand, Heart. So we help improve the children's learning in school. So we don't just get children to school, we improve their learning. They're very evidence-based because there's that whole study that they do and they measure students against that and see how well they're doing. They're about building the foundational blocks that, obviously they can't study more unless they know the basics of writing, reading, and arithmetic. And they work directly as well as in partnership with other NGOs and with the government. So every child in school and learning well, which is really their baseline. So just use that as their purpose. So again, a third organization also aimed in primary schools, but again, very, very different sort of a brand, and you can sort of identify with it, and lovely storytelling as well. And the fourth brand I want to talk about is a brand I've been associated with for a couple of years. Is based in Bangalore. It was started by a couple of Microsoft engineers, and so they left Microsoft and decided to get into primary education. Their idea was to use technology. So what they've done is essentially that they get volunteers, techies and other people, housewives and others who have the time, who could be anywhere in the world, but they need to teach a class 5 to class 8 class in a village in rural India for a whole term. So you're not signing up for one class, you're signing up for a whole term, and you are live with that class, but you're there via video conferencing. So the government actually, and this was a big surprise to me, the government has actually made the investments to have television screens, computers, internet in all these villages. Doesn't get used. So what eVidyaloka does is works with partners, NGOs in those villages to make sure that the children collect at the right time and the computer is switched on and the internet is connected. And then you sitting here at your house can teach that child for that one period, and then again the next day or whatever it is. So here's a little video about eVidyaloka's work.
Education system in rural India has undergone tremendous reforms, infrastructure development plans, and increased enrollment plans. But the learning outcome of the kids is still low, and the school dropout rate is still very high. It's around 50% for classes 5th to 8th grade kids in rural India. The need of the hour is to increase the quality of education in our country. Do you know there are more than 50 crores of kids from 5th to 8th class in rural India? 54% of 5th grade children can't read 2nd grade textbook. There are schools with 400 children and just 2 teachers. There is a shortage of whopping 10 lakh teachers in rural India. eVidyaloka's approach is to act as a bridge between passionate volunteers like you and needy children to improve the quality of education for kids in rural India. Since the penetration of internet into rural India is deep, it is possible to connect individuals from anywhere around the world. Volunteers can teach through digital classrooms, wherein there is a TV, a computer, and a Skype connection. It is as simple as it sounds. Teachers are equipped with state curriculum textbooks and with rich digital media. eVidyaloka works on a unique model, partnering with local non-profit organizations, school managements, government bodies, and multilingual volunteer bodies. Everything is managed using the eVidyaloka's software platform, which makes it easy for teachers to manage their classes, class content, and their students. Impact is measured using various factors such as Teacher Effectiveness Index, children performance in assessment tests, etc. More than 6,000 kids from over 70 villages across India have benefited from eVidyaloka so far. There are thousands more waiting to be taught. Is contributing to improving quality of education among future citizens of India something that excites you? Is teaching kids and interacting with them, sharing fun and joy something that makes you feel satisfied? Then visit www.evidyaloka.org to know more about centers in your state and register online to start making difference right away.
And so this is their brand heart. So we create digital classrooms for children in remote villages. So they're about how do they do it? They do it with volunteer teachers, again, collaboration with government and NGOs, and with a technology backbone. And their vision is transforming the educational landscape of rural India, or maybe another way to put it is to bridge the gap. So I think that's phenomenal again. So the idea being to say that, the brand, just because you're working in the same space does not mean your brand has to be the same. There are 4 slightly different business models or intervention models, and 4 completely different brands, but which are very clear so that almost everybody who's working with them has that sense. And I think that to repeat what we said earlier, that it's because you have a clear identity internally, and your people and everybody else who volunteers with you are your brand ambassadors. They spread the message of your brand. That leads to a stronger image outside. And finally, that stronger image is what results in inspiring others who want to work with you, helping you raise money, helping you get volunteers, helping you do advocacy and whatever else that you wish to do. Before I end, I just want to talk a little bit about storytelling. And you saw some excellent examples of storytelling over there. And one of the things, so people are good at storytelling actually. And, NGOs now realize that we must not just throw data at people. We must talk about, Mira or whoever. So you have to talk about one little child and, But I think the one thing that the social sector often misses out, or great storytellers remember, is the importance of the villain, right? I mean, if you think about Ram, for example, in Ramayana, and I know I might get shot at the rate I'm like taking pot shots at Hindu sort of epics. But you think of Ram, I mean, Ram is not such a great character, right? I mean, he seems to have made bad decisions right through his life and so on and so forth. But what makes him particularly a great hero is actually Ravan. Because you think of Ravan was this amazing guy with 10 heads. He was a king of an extremely rich kingdom, Sone ki Lanka, as they said, he had these amazing boons from God, and so he could only be killed under special circumstances. He had this amazing army with these really great warriors. And what did Ram have? Ram had an army made up of some monkeys and apes, and Ram beat Ravan. So the reason Ram is heroic is because that villain was so ferocious. And that's what we have to do. We have to spend time. And you look at Hindi movies, every Bollywood movie is great at this, right? From Gabbar Singh to Mocambo, Prem Chopra, Pran. I mean, we've got some really great villains in Hindi movies. And our heroes look good because they are able to beat these villains. I think in the social sector, whether it is the villain is a person or it's an idea, the villain is important, because otherwise there's no story. And Aristotle said this thousands of years ago. He created this 3-act structure. So the story is, act 1, boy meets girl, and but then there is this other villain, and then there is this problem. This, it could be an idea. So maybe they are from different religions, or one is rich, one is poor, whatever. There's a problem. And then something happens which surmounts that problem, and they live happily ever after. So whatever the story is, that's the arc of the story. And by just without talking of the problem, we cannot tell a story. So what is a villain? We spend too much time talking about what we do, about ourselves and things like that. Not enough time. And you saw that Pratham video. I mean, it's painful to see that girl trying to read, when, that girl Mira, when she's trying to read and saying Ram, Lal, something, something. And then you see the transformation in this girl, and that, that villain which was then transformed is really amazing. And again, I want to go back and think about Amir Khan, right? I mean, the master storyteller that he is. And you think of Satyamev Jayate, and every episode of Satyamev Jayate was on one cause. If you go back and look at, you can go back to satyamevjayate whatever, the website, and you look at their old episodes. I timed it. 60% of the episode is about the problem, right? He just brings in people who have suffered because of that particular cause that we're talking about. The people cry on the show. He cries on the show. Everybody who's watching cries on the show. He shows data which shows how big this problem is. 60% of the show is about the problem. And then in the remaining part of the show, he starts talking about some possible solution. Some people from the social sector, others are doing good work in this space. And then he gives hope. And then at the end, he finishes with a song that you remember, so that it becomes like a little memory bird for you. And he asks you to come contribute by sending an SMS or sending money or whatever. And that is the brilliance of storytelling, which results in people giving money and so on and so forth, amount of money that he raised at that time. And just almost before I finish my second last slide, I want to show you one song from one of his shows, which I think is a beautiful song again, and encapsulates the whole episode so well.
दोस्तों राम संपत और स्वानंद किरकिरे
चिड़ैया नन्ही सी चिड़िया अंगना में फिर आ रे ओरी चिड़ैया नन्ही सी चिड़िया अंगना में फिर आ जा रे अंधियारा घना और लहू से सना किरणों के तिनके अंबर से चुनके अंगना में फिर आ जा रे हमने तुझ पे हजारों सितम है किए हमने तुझ पे जहां भर के जुल्म किए हमने सोचा नहीं तू जो उड़ जाएगी ये जमीन तेरे बिन सूनी रह जाएगी किसके दम पे सजेगा मेरा अंगना ओरी चिड़ैया मेरी चिड़ैया अंगना में फिर आ जा रे सितारे जड़ूं तेरी चूनर धनक सतरंगी बुनूं तेरे काजल में मैं काली रहना भरूं तेरी मेहंदी में मैं कच्ची धूप मलूं तेरे नैनों सजा दूं नया सपना ओरी चिड़ैया मेरी चिड़ैया अंगना में फिर आ जा रे ओरी चिड़ैया नन्ही सी चिड़िया अंगना में फिर आ जा रे ओरी चिड़ैया
Okay, so this is my last slide. It's like a summary slide. So the title of this talk was Don't Beg, Inspire. And I think the key points I want to make is that leaders inspire action. So they don't beg, they inspire people to join them in their movement. And, you know, one of the things that we saw with all those examples of these great fundraising movements was that they got privileged people involved in it. So it was not just saying, please give for this poor person because this person needs it or whatever. It was it got there 4 people involved. That really what helps. You really need brands both internally and externally. And brands building is not about advertising. It's not about only external communication. It's really about, do you and your team really understand what it is that you're doing? Do you understand the story? What is it? Can you just say it in simple words, in very few words? You don't need many pages and many slides to explain what you do. And I find that's very hard. A lot of NGOs, when I ask them, what do you do? They take 15 minutes to tell me. But can we encapsulate everything that we do in those, there's little hut that I tried to create. And that will come when you focus on the why, because the what that you do may change from time to time, may change from community, geography, but the why hopefully stays constant. And also it ensures that you don't deviate from your course just because there's a funder who comes in and says, I'll give you money to do X or Y or whatever. And when you're telling stories, identify the villain, because that's just so important in storytelling. So that's really it. I'll stop sharing now. I'm happy to take questions, comments. I can see there's some stuff on chat. I don't know if there are comments, but.
Great. Thank you so much, Suman. That was a really inspiring session with a lot of examples. I think you took on the bull by the horn when you said that people have a lot of preconceived notions, and shared so many different examples as well. I think that was really amazing. I think I'm going to try to moderate some of these questions which have come up on chat for everyone, and then I will open it out to the audience to ask questions directly as well. So one of the questions, Suman, which is often asked is, there are various ways to raise money, tell stories, build brands. And I think there is one school of thought which says you should tell a story about a single person if you want to raise money, because that is what inspires, that is what motivates, that is what emotes. Somewhat very much like the Mira story potentially from Pratham. But at the same time, we see these examples wherein, brands have gone and associated with larger problems. I mean, all the American examples that you gave, the Susan G. Komen, the Red, really talked about a larger cause, a larger area, a larger problem, and obviously have done great as well. So how do you kind of marry the two, or what do you see as the dichotomy between the two?
No, it's not a dichotomy. And, I can go back to Amir Khan and Satyamev Jayate, because he would interweave the two. It was always the individual stories interwoven with data about how big the problem was. So you were not left feeling that, we know that Mira is not the only one, right? There are many, many, many Miras out there. And so we see that. And maybe it was not evident in this particular video, but overall, Pratham obviously will talk about the millions of children in India and what their learning levels are. Their report does it, so on and so forth. So I think that there is that thing. And I think it's also a question about saying, what is the villain? So the villain is, you've identified the villain, you can bring the villain to life, but that's really the thought. So I think you've got to do both. But if you have only a choice of one, then go for the child, go for the individual story is my point of view. I keep saying that marketing is really about empathy. That's the difference. In the social sector also, we say we are about empathy. But the moment you start talking to people and say, who do you work with? And they give me a label. I work with migrant workers, or I work with landless farmers, or I work with, whatever. So it's always this label. But, I keep in my class showing this picture of migrant workers. Now, you see that picture of that mother dragging that suitcase with the child sitting on that suitcase, or that father with a little girl on his shoulder and walking back, and God knows how much they have to walk after the lockdown last year. And there's a different emotion you feel from the other picture of thousands of people outside maybe Bandra station or Bandra terminus or some bus station in Delhi, Noida, wherever it was. Thousands of people trying to get back home. They're both pictures of migrant workers. But you can empathize with one, while you also have to realize that there were these lakhs of people who were stranded somewhere. And both facts need to be there so that you want to support that cause. And so I think that that's really the game. That's how you have to work with this.
So you're saying we need to interweave both. Potentially start with a story and move to a larger picture kind of thing. I think that's great advice. Another question that's coming through, and I'm going to link it to to your presentation. I think a lot of people will say education is the easiest cause to raise money, especially people outside of education, right? And I've often found that people find their cause the most difficult to raise. I know organizations in education will say there's too much competition in education. Everyone, there are so many NGOs, the most number of NGOs are in education. How do we raise money? So we've got a lot of such, questions actually. Just said, I'm in arts and culture, and no one wants to give. How do I do something about it? I'm in leprosy. No one, that's kind of a term. Nothing you can do really about it. So people don't want to give. Or I'm in palliative care again, where again nothing, no great positive outcome can fundamentally life-changing outcome can happen. And thus, how do I do this in terms of raising money, building brand? So, I mean, I'm sure you have seen a very, very wide spectrum in your time in the social sector. What would you tell them?
Yeah. No, so first of all, let me say that I wish there was some simple panacea for everything, right? I mean, it's not that I have some secret sauce that I can. So I totally empathize with you that with all the people who are saying that their cause is hard. There are hard causes. I was associated with ARPAN, which is in child sexual abuse, very hard to raise money for child sexual abuse, and so on and so forth. So there are many causes which are harder. Having said that, I think that, if we take the marketing process a little bit more seriously, and if we don't have this aversion that the social sector has to marketing, then maybe there are solutions that we can find. To begin with, who do we want to raise money from? Who do we target? And most guys will say everybody. And that's a really bad answer, because when you say everybody, you mean nobody, right? So you got to start saying, who am I going to go for? Who are the people? Which segment? How small? No matter how small, because movements start from very small people and then they spread. And I can give many examples, and this is going to go into another presentation and the whole workshop, etc. But the point is that small, even if it's a tiny group of people, maybe families of people who've suffered from that particular disease, if it's the case of leprosy or something else, or people who've got that, something special. And can you go from there? And can you have a sharp enough message? What is your message? Is your message only about leprosy? What is the message that you really want to give us? What is it that you're doing which is really spectacular? What is it that is new news that you can tell me, which will help build your brand and make it unforgettable? Because the point again is that, Susan Komen Foundation worked on breast cancer, which was not the most prevalent form of cancer, right? And you can argue that, why didn't it go after some other form of cancer? Why did that other cancer raise more money? And, how did she do that? And it's, again, I think it's about saying, how can I stage my story a little bit better? So, obviously I can't solve individual problems just here. And even if I could work on your cause, I may not be, but still, I think that, there are probably processes that you can use which will help you go a little bit further than you are right now. But I don't want to belittle the problem, right? The problem is big and it's not.
Right. So Suman, a lot of people are very enamored with your villain idea. That seems to have struck a chord for everyone. They're obviously all battling social problems, and I think they want to, I think the villain idea stuck very well. So there are some questions around here. Can you maybe talk a little bit more, expand a little bit more with some examples of how one could frame that?
Yeah, no, I think so. Okay, let's look at websites. So of course, now when I look at the communication, we have seen the villain. So if you go back to that Susan Komen, that yogurt commercial for breast cancer, you saw that 80-90% of the film was really talking about the problem, talking about who all, what breast cancer and all the issues over there. That's the villain. That's the villain we're trying to fight over here, and then it comes to the solution, etc. And we can see that with the Pratham film, etc. But when you go outside of this as well, I think when I see, okay, if you look at websites of NGOs, now just Google top non-profit websites in 2019 or something like that, right? So you'll see that many organizations around the world rank non-profit websites. Now go to any of those top 10 websites and look at their websites and look at the websites that most of us in the social sector in India have. And you'll see that all of them focus a lot more on the problem, water or whatever it is, whatever is the one that is, and they spoke on and then they ask you to join that movement. They don't spend a lot of time and effort telling you who they are and what they're doing, etc. It's there somewhere, but it's not the focus. In our case, our programs are front and center. Here's the program, here's what you can do. Help me donate now. And the big donate button, as if that's going to make people donate. Now, even as someone who wants to donate money, I have multiple causes. And in each cause, I have many NGOs. For each NGO, I have many projects. Now, where do I go? Think about that donor. Why should I donate to you in your particular project is a problem that we have to solve for this donor. And I think that it will only come by attracting me to that cause. And we don't know what that is. And I can't just straight away give you that answer. But it has to come by defining that problem very well. If I'm really taken up by that cause, by that villain, as I'm calling it, it's only then that you will come out as, wow, you're fighting that big battle. So what is it with leprosy? I mean, this whole idea may be that leprosy is a preventable disease, it's a curable disease, it's a treatable disease. If we catch it early, our problem is we're not doing enough testing, we're not catching early, we don't have whatever our issues are with leprosy. I mean, I'm not an expert, whatever. So, or TB or whatever it is. So I think that that's really the key thing. How much can you speak about that? And I see presentations that start and, maybe there's one slide on the problem and the second slide is about us, and that's it. And then there's a 30-slide presentation about, 29 slides are about what we do. And it'll go into details like, this is my org structure and this is my funding plan. I mean, you really don't need to do that. I mean, I push back against that and say, why do we need to have that in the presentation? Especially as a first-time presentation to a funder. Focus on the problem. Tell me why I should worry about that problem in comparison to all the other problems that are out there in the world or out there in our society. Tell me why you, which is why there's so much effort in Hindi movies to make that villain really villainous, whether it is the house, the place he lives in, or some quirks about the guy or whatever else, or just the pure cruelty of that guy. But you have to make that villain really scary and really something that I want to fight against, and then introduce yourself.
Yeah, they really make us hate the villain. I think that's a job that filmmakers do really well. So I'm going to now open it up so I have a couple of questions, but I want to open it up to the audience to ask them directly. But before we do that, for all participants, please share your feedback on this, on this session by Suman. We'd love to hear more from you and see what other kinds of sessions can be done. I have shared the link in the chat window, so if you can take a minute to just answer that, and then we can get down to the Q&A as well. Right. So whosoever wants to ask a question, if you can raise your hand on your video or on the chat, please do that, and I will unmute you. There were a lot of questions on chat asking specifics. Urge you to not get into the specifics of your organization, but to keep it broad so that we can, it can benefit everyone. But any questions that are there? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. So let me proceed with a couple of questions that I have. So Suman, you showed, okay, I see one. Aditi is asking a question. So Aditi, please go ahead.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for today. It's genuinely left a lot of food for thought. But when I was when I was watching the first 4 videos that were presented, so pink, red, so on and so forth, one of the things that I realized that they were really able to build on was one, that they had networking and they'd managed to get celebrities to eventually endorse them. And the other one was the fact that there was, how do I put this? There was something that the donors are able to get that was beyond just the happy feeling that Dan was. For example, when you're talking about something like the Dan Utsav, it was a week where very specifically the idea was giving. And if once a year I have to give, I feel happy and I can do that once. But to make it into something that, so what is that? So what is it that the customer, and I'm saying using customers very, with a lot of awareness, that it seemed like the customers were getting something that turned them into donors, which made them as big as it did. So even with, when I was looking at with breast awareness, there was a product to be sold. So you buy the pink ribbons, which sort of made you physically an active part of the campaign. So if in absence of, so would you recommend that some sort of moniker be attached, or would there need to be a physical product to sustain donors? I'm a little confused with that aspect of it.
No, not at all, Aditi. I think certainly don't have to have a product, but let's expand on the Dan Utsav thing. It's about making you feel good about participating. Or you look at Satyamev Jayate, they raise lots of money, crores of rupees from every episode for different kinds of causes. And again, it was internal for you. And I think that, we've done research, in fact, for Give India, which looked at why people give. And people give for causes. People have something called a case giver, cause giver, condition giver, all of this. They have different mindsets that make people give. But a lot of it is internal. And so can you tap into that? Can you make people feel good about it? And can you, so we can get into, nudge theory and behavior change and all that, and how that helps you. So I think that this idea that, but again, when we pitch, we're often not focused on what the donor feels, on making sure that the donor feels good. Again, when I look at, let's say, Make-A-Wish Foundation. So Make-A-Wish really just says, here, help this child. And this child wants to, whatever, go to Goa, or wants to wants to be a policeman for a day, or wants to meet Sachin Tendulkar or whatever, and they make that happen. And so you're feeling good about that. And so really, I think a lot of donors are about that. I mean, if you're going to an institutional donor, how does it make that either that organization look if they associate with you, or that person in the organization? How? Because, like I keep saying, CSR companies, I mean, if they write a check to a big organization, let's say, Goons, or they'll write to Educate, Teach for India, whatever, nobody will ask them questions. Why did you give to that organization? They write a check for a small organization, somebody could question them and say, is there corruption involved? Is that your wife or your brother or your somebody's relatives NGO, and you're laundering money, etc., etc. So again, you're going to look at it and say, how do I make sure that this guy doesn't get into trouble because he's going to support me? And so again, the basics of marketing is think of the other person, have empathy for the person you're communicating with, and think about it from their point of view. And I think the one message that I want to send out from all of this is, we think from our point of view. We think we know, and we are arrogant in the social sector. We think we know what the society needs, and when we provide it, why don't they give it? And meanwhile, why doesn't the rest of society support us? Because we're doing good work. But it doesn't work like that. So can we change that? Yes, Pinku Shah. Can you unmute?
Yeah, I probably just want to add in that I say that symbolism is very important. I think symbolism is a concept in marketing for anything, right? So I think that's where the red product, the pink ribbon, the yellow happy dot, all of these play a role towards making it happen.
Yeah, the Tsunamika, there's an organization called Tsunamika, which works with people who are affected by tsunami. And they send you this little doll, literally this big, which you can put on top of a pen or pencil, or you can hang it in your car or whatever. It's just lovely. It just costs nothing. And it creates conversation, because every time somebody sees it around my house, they'll say, what is this? And I have to talk to them about Tsunamika, and maybe that helps Tsunamika get, one more person involved or whatever. Yeah, Pinku.
Hi, Suman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, Suman, it was really a very nice thoughts and discussion is going on. So I am having just a question that you talk about the ambassadors and the Danutsav, how to create the videos and what is the impact to the donors and the people. So the ambassadors you are speaking, I don't think the big ambassadors will connect with the NGOs, because we work for the deafblind children and adults. So is it possible for a ambassador to connect with us?
No, because that was not the message. My core message is in terms of defining your brand. Can you write the why, how, and what of your organization? I don't think it's about the ambassador. Sure, maybe the examples are used, or because they're films and they're easy to show you, etc., in a presentation like this. But let's go back and saying, what is it that you do? And, how are you different from every other organization that is also maybe working with blind people, etc.? And what is it that you do? How are you different? And what is the larger purpose that you're working towards? Why should I associate with your cause? I think if you answer these questions, you will get people who will start to support you. And then maybe more people and more people. Brand ambassador is not, I'm not at all recommending that we all go and find brand ambassadors and get them to talk about us. That's not I'm sorry if that's the message that came through. That's not the intention. Yes, Gaganpal Singh.
Okay. I think Pinku has a follow-up. We'll probably just take that first.
Pinku, did you have a follow-up?
Pinku, please unmute your mic. Okay, so let's go ahead with yes, Pinku. I think she's having some trouble. So we'll go with Gaganpal.
Yeah, thank you. I think so. Today's session.
Yes, Gaganpal, can you ask a question?
Yeah, he's asking. Yeah. I can hear him.
Yeah, a quite valuable session today. I'm from Vision Spring. We are into eyeglasses and eye screening for low-income groups. My question is, how can we reach, let's say if we have our why clear, how can we reach decision makers or donors who have the power to take decisions quickly?
I mean, there's no, I don't have any short answer for that, but I mean, my basic point is that whatever limited means of communication that you have, if you can be more inspirational, then after that, it might be serendipity. Somebody connects you with somebody else or whatever. I think our focus needs to be on brand. That's really the message that I'm talking about. Can we have an inspirational brand that both internally and externally people want to align themselves to? And when you do that, then other people come. I mean, Venkat was one guy, right? He started DanaMojo. Literally, the first time he met me on it, we were sitting in a cafe coffee day down the road from where I live. And it seemed like a pipe dream. And today it's in hundreds of cities across the country. It's 11 years old, raises crores of rupees, whatever. So it's possible for one man without too much backing to be able to do, without any backing actually. And if we go back into the stories of all the people we've spoken about, Susan Common, whoever, or even Pratham, or any of these, or Educate Girls or Teach for India, they all started as one girl, one person, young person at that, and they managed to do it in 10 years. It's become a household brand name. People who are not in the sector know about these kind of brand names. Gunj, one guy. So I think we can get inspired by all these people, and rather than sort of say, oh, but I don't have contacts, or oh, my cause nobody wants. I mean, I'm sorry for being slightly. I'm not being unsympathetic. I appreciate that there are problems, But overall, even when I go to foundation, they say there are not enough NGOs. Foundations say I don't have good NGOs to support. Who will scale? Because they've also got to show results. And they need people who can scale and who can show impact and who will not die after 3 years. And people say, why did you give them money? And so how do we do that? And one of the tools in the arsenal is the brand. And so therefore this session has been about the brand. Not the only arsenal, not the only weapon in your arsenal, but certainly an important one. Thanks, Galan. Okay. Yeah. Pinku again, I think maybe she sorted it out or whatever.
Yeah, Pinku, you can unmute your mic. Yeah, please ask a question. Okay, I think yeah, Pinku, go ahead. Okay, I think there's some problem. So I think we will. I think there is one last question that I'd like to ask someone. I think one of the questions that came up was most funders don't give money to even fund admin costs to a decent extent. How can we make investments in brand? And this branding requires a lot of investment. And how do we do that? What would be your thought on that?
Yeah. So two major points. One, branding, especially internal branding, costs no money. Your biggest brand ambassadors are your own people. And I bet you that even if I just take the founders or the 4 or 5 senior most members of the organization and tell them to write on one page what they're all about, they will not all write the same thing. So I think that's the starting point, that can you get your internal branding right? And that will start to then go out in circles. Second thing is that actually you're spending money on communication that you don't realize. You're spending money creating a website. You're printing your annual report. You're sending out emailers. You've got social media handles. You've got, I think you're creating program leaflets or program brochures or whatever, or some communication material for program, etc. So actually there are multiple things that you're doing for communication. In order to manage all this, you're probably paying for 1 or 2 people, right? Or at least part of their time is somebody is managing all this, and therefore there's that cost. So actually there is a cost that you are spending on communication. And so it's not true that you're not spending anything. I think this is about saying if you get your brand right, that budget that you're anyway spending will get spent better. And in any case, for internal communication, you don't really need a budget. You need clarity. And then there is like a super spreader event, right? These things spread very, very fast and very wide. And we can, there's much research on this, on how fast word of mouth travels. And our key message is word of mouth. But word of mouth, it's very difficult for complex messages to travel by word of mouth. Word of mouth requires a simple message. And what is your simple message? And it has to have a sticky message, not a blah message, like I work with blind people. Yeah, okay, fine. So what? How do I do it? I work with an organization blind with camera. I worked for a while with them. And now that's interesting. Blind people, can they take photographs? And then you realize that actually you have to come to an exhibition and see blind people's photographs, and I bought some, and suddenly there is this whole thing of, wow, I didn't know blind people could do that. Or that, there's another organization which just did a entrepreneurial contest, like a pitch contest for blind people. They could pitch their ideas to be entrepreneurs. And I think that that's fabulous. And then suddenly people want to say, yeah. And you don't have to go around telling people blind people are people too. And, they're actually very competent. They can do lots of things. And I think that what that message is, what is it that you're really talking about? What's that purpose that, if you want to say it blandly, saying, blind people can do lots of things, etc. But how do you take it to that next level? How do you define the brand and take it forward? So that's the primary message. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to belittle anyone. So.
Great. No, thanks a lot, Suman. I think this is a great mirror for the social sector to ourselves. And thanks for sharing all those examples.
Sorry, just one sec, Dhaval. There's a question in the chat saying, so the question why, is it about the why of the organization or the why of people working in the organization? I think, first of all, what I was talking about through the session was the why of the organization, but it equally works for us, right? For every individual to say, why are we doing what we do? My why is to make the social sector think about marketing, empathy, so whatever. So I don't know if I'm saying it well enough. But, at every level, you can think of the why. But the session was about the why of the organization.
Great.
All right.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. And I know we've gone overboard. Thank you. I think this will be a lovely session. We will be sharing the recording. I think there was a lot covered. I think people would want to see it in pieces. We will be sharing the recording with everyone. And just before we sign off, the DanaMojo video that would like to just share about DanaMojo with everyone. So thank you everyone for this session, and thanks to Suman for for helping us do this. If anyone's interested, please, I've shared a link. We can inquire with us, and we will reach out to you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Suman.
Bye.